All right, let's dive into an incredible journey today that is absolutely going to reframe how we look at the quiet, maybe difficult people in our lives. Welcome to this explainer. We're going to completely decode the silent mind, challenge some deep assumptions, and figure out what is truly happening beneath the surface of someone who just seems to have shut down and gone totally quiet.
There's this brilliant saying that silence is not a weakness. Rather, people sometimes choose to let go of words just to protect themselves. And that perfectly sets up exactly what we're looking at today. Why does a lifelong friend sometimes end up feeling like a complete stranger, just hiding behind a massive wall of silence? We almost always assume their silence means there's an absence of thought, right? But as we're going to discover, it's actually a profound, highly complex defense mechanism.
So let's start by looking at the very tip of the iceberg, those baffling external behaviors that frustrate us so much. On the surface, what do we see? We see a friend, mid-20s, who does literally nothing but stare blankly at the TV. He takes absolutely forever to eat a simple meal or take a shower. To the rest of the world, this screams one thing, doesn't it? Lazy. We look at this and think, man, what a waste of time. Why can't you just get moving? But what if we are reading the signals completely wrong? Because here is the critical plot twist. What looks like sloppy laziness to us is actually a person entirely paralyzed by intense sensory overload. Think about it. Every single sound, the temperature of the shower water, the literal texture of the food, it all registers in his brain as heavy, exhausting data. He's doing nothing just to conserve vital energy. It isn't laziness at all. It's an extreme defensive posture just to keep his brain from completely burning out. To really get this, we need to dive below the waterline and understand the hidden operating system that's actually running in his brain. And this brings up a genuinely fascinating mystery for anyone who actually knows him. Why does this completely silent, flatly expressive guy suddenly start laughing, talking, and demanding to go to karaoke after just a few drinks? It is like a switch flips, and it can be incredibly confusing for the people around him who are so used to the silence. You'd probably assume the alcohol is fundamentally changing his personality, right? But in reality, it's just a release of suppression. The alcohol is temporarily weakening the brain's inhibition. It's literally removing the lifelong invisible brakes that have been forced onto his behavior. He isn't magically becoming someone else. He's just finally stopping the utterly exhausting act of hiding. That desire to sing, to laugh, to connect, it was trapped inside him all along. And notice what happens when those brakes finally come off. He doesn't speak in standard, rigid, logical sentences. He uses this incredibly vivid, sensory language to describe the world. He'll say things like, "My body felt fuzzy," or "It felt sort of like this color." This is huge because it proves his internal life is incredibly rich and highly textured. It is not empty. He's just trying to communicate a feeling that everyday words simply can't capture. So rather than forcing a single, neat medical label on him, this beautifully illustrates how overlapping traits come together. We're seeing autism spectrum traits like that intense sensory focus and the need for strict routines, combined with ADHD traits like zoning out when overwhelmed and those impulsive releases. Together, they create a completely different, highly sensitive operating system that processes the world in a way the standard neurotypical brain just doesn't. Okay, so what environmental currents locked this uniquely sensitive OS into such a massive defensive state? Well, we have to look at his home environment. Let's look at this clinically. The chemical reaction of having an aggressive, boundary-crossing mother paired with a silent, passive father created a perfect storm for this kid. He unconsciously learned from his mother that speaking up meant having your boundaries totally trampled. And from his father, he learned that becoming completely invisible was honestly the only viable survival strategy in that house. I mean, even in his 20s, his mother managed him with questions like, "Are your shoes tied?" or "Do you have your wallet?" And she'd use that sweet, gentle voice that you usually reserve for a toddler. This wasn't just overprotective parenting. It fundamentally robbed him of the opportunity to develop any self-reliance. When someone always steps in before you can even think for yourself, you completely forget how to start your own engine. Now take that lack of tools, combine it with extreme sensory sensitivity, and throw it into the fast-paced modern world, it creates a massive, heartbreaking collision. Think about how society expects us to move. It's breakneck speed. We're expected to effortlessly navigate a whole series of digital steps. Search for jobs online, apply through complex digital platforms, manage your shifts in a proprietary app. We treat this as totally effortless,
But actually, it's an incredibly high-speed, demanding process just to get your foot in the door for a basic entry-level job.
But contrast our modern expectation with his actual reality. Trapped without a smartphone because his parents literally wouldn't allow one, he bravely tried to enter society using a paper flyer and a landline phone. In today's hyper-digital landscape, trying to coordinate that way, it immediately signals to employers that you are completely out of sync with how the world works. And he was actually rejected from a simple supermarket stocking job with these devastating words. "It's great you're earnest, but your speed is just too slow." This highlights a tough reality. His meticulous, easily overwhelmed operating system is fundamentally incompatible with society's demand for high-speed efficiency. It wasn't that he was failing to try. His processing speed just couldn't match the modern conveyor belt. His mother actually told him to buy a smartphone once you start working, completely missing the tragic irony there. A smartphone isn't a luxury toy you earn anymore. In the modern world, it is literally a mandatory auxiliary brain device. You physically need it to access information, to find support groups, and to even get the job required to buy the phone in the first place.
So finally, let's talk about us, the friends. How do we process our own guilt when we inevitably have to walk away from someone like this?
As his friend, you might look back and feel terrible for yelling things like, "Why are you so slow?" or "Speak clearly" in the past. You might look back and think you were cruel. But the absolute crucial point here is that you only said those things because you respected him enough to treat him as an equal. You believed he was capable of more, and you were engaging with him directly, peer to peer.
And hey, let's not forget what else you did. Lending him a smartphone, showing him YouTube, trying to make him laugh, dragging him out to karaoke. Looking back, your interventions were likely his absolute only lifeline to the outside world beyond his suffocating living room. You literally gave him a vibrant window to a world he otherwise never, ever could have reached.
Stepping away wasn't an act of cruelty. It was a completely necessary boundary, because the reality is no single friend can provide the massive, structural, lifelong support that this unique operating system requires to function in our society. You have to live your life too, and honestly, accepting that limit is incredibly important. So we want to leave you with this final thought. Absolve yourself of the guilt of walking away. You really did enough. And as you look at the people around you, ask yourself, how many silent people in your own life are just running a totally different OS, waiting to be understood? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will see you next time.